So the two of them are coming from the Electoral Commission. Dr. Asari is not with us, he is in Columbus. And then we have Madame Abdulfa, who is also one of the commissioners. She is also a lawyer. She couldn't come with us on this particular team. Then we have the political parties. We have the representative of the NPP, who is the General Secretary, John Boadu. But anytime he cannot come to, or any of those groups cannot be represented, they send a delegate, and Mr. Nimakon is representing the General Secretary of the NPP as far as this trip is concerned. And anytime he's not been able to come, all through our consultation, he's been representing the, and he's also the director for elections, so research, so it's very key for him to be here. Unfortunately, we could not get the NDC to be on this trip, and it's not an intentional thing. Originally, Dr. Benjamin Kumbo had been the NDC rep on this committee, and he's worked with us all through the work that we've done, visiting all the 10 regions, the then 10 regions of the country. And then at the last minute, the NDC decided to change their delegate and bring in Elvis Free Ankara. Unfortunately, when the arrangements were being made, Dr. Kumbo's name had been submitted for visa, and he had been given his visa, but at the last minute they decided to change their representative to Elvis. And then we decided to process his visa. At the time we were leaving, his visa had not been acquired yet. All the necessary arrangements were being made to make sure that he would come. So we brought along with us everything that he's entitled to so that he could join us. And since we've been here, we've been calling consistently to find out what is going on. Unfortunately, we've not heard anything from him. So it's not been a deliberate thing to take the NDC out, but it's because they made a change. And it was at the last minute. We had even requested that if they could send anybody with a visa to come to the US who could represent them, that would be acceptable. But they chose that he was the only person they wanted him to represent them, and that is why he's not with us. Then we have 3 representatives of the civil society. I represent the National Peace Council, even though I'm the president of the Ghana Baptist Convention. As far as this program is concerned, I'm here on the ticket of the National Peace Council. We have another brother with us, Dr. Kojo Asante. He is also with the team in Columbus, and he represents the Center for Democratic Development, CDD. And then we have one other person, Dr. Jampo, who could also not come along with us. We have a third person representing the political parties, and he is representing all the remaining minority parties. So the NDC has 1 rep, LPP has 1, and the rest of the minority parties have 1. And they are represented by Mr. Kofi Apalu, who is also the presidential candidate for the Liberal Party of Ghana, the LPG. It's not the LPG gas, it's the LPG. All right. So these are the members of the team. Now, the commission put together this team, and as has been said, we've done a lot of work, but we had a TOR in terms of reference, and that had focused on 5 key things. The first was to do a text research on countries that are practicing external voting and how it's being implemented. So apart from the fact that we've sought information from Ghanaians within the country, we've also attempted to do a text study, look at other countries who are doing this, what are they doing, what's involved, and how have they handled that. Secondly, to do a stakeholder consultation with a view to seeking opinions of key stakeholders on the best approach to the implementation of Ropaa. And that has been done extensively in Ghana. We've toured all the 10 regions. Before we added a few more. We've had several other consultations. I think in all, we've done a minimum of about 15 different consultations in Ghana with different groups across the country to make sure that we can hear from our own people. Third was to review any recommendations made on the implementation of Ropaa and make further recommendations for its implementation, taking into account international best practices and changes in Ghana's electoral processes. In 2011, there was a committee that worked on Ropaa, and unfortunately, after they worked on it, the Electoral Commission could not put in place the processes for this to take place. Between 2011 and now, the electoral processes has changed. Initially, we did not have biometric registration. Now we do. So fingerprints are taken and all of those things have been done. So the system has changed. And that means that this committee could not just rely on the old committee's report because of the changes, but to go back, look at what they've done, look at the best things that they put in there, what can we do to improve on the recommendations that were made. And so we've taken the steps to go back. We began by looking at their report as a base, and how do we build on that to come to where we want to be. The fourth was study the High Court ruling on implementation of Ropaa and advise the Commission on how it can comply with the orders made by the courts. I'm sure all of you are aware that there was a court case as far as Ropaa was concerned. The judge made certain pronouncements, and what we're seeking to do is to follow the judgment that was given and the things that we're supposed to do. Finally, to make recommendations on the modalities for the implementation of Ropaa. So, in terms of our recommendation to the Commission as to what to do, has influenced our decision to do this stakeholder consultation to make sure that we hear from our own people what we think is the best way we can approach this whole thing. In all the consultations we've done, certain key things have surfaced, and these are the key things we want to address tonight. The first one is, how do we identify a Ghanaian? In other words, the Ropaa law states that a person who is a citizen of Ghana, resident outside the Republic, is entitled to be registered as a voter if the person satisfies the requirements for registration prescribed by law, other than those relating to residence in the polling division. So this whole thing is situated in law. The first question is, who is a citizen, and how do we identify a Ghanaian citizen? Number two, he said that it is a Ghanaian citizen resident outside the Republic. So the person lives outside Ghana. What are the things that we need to satisfy ourselves that this is a Ghanaian who lives outside the country? All right. So that is the first issue we're going to address. How do we identify a Ghanaian? Two, how do we identify the Ghanaian who lives abroad? What kind of documentation do we need? In the first place, some people have suggested that we use the Ghanaian passport. Others have raised issues that, well, what if the passport is not valid? What do you do? Somebody traveled 30 years ago, my passport is not valid. So when you want to talk about the passport, do you take an old passport? Do you take a valid passport? These are questions that we want you to help us. Number two, if we talk about resident abroad, what kind of documentation do we need? Okay, I have a visa to be here, but does that just show that I'm supposed to be a resident here? Do I need resident permit? Do I just need an address? What is it that we're looking at? And in the midst of all these things, we are looking at what is it that will satisfy every Ghanaian or majority of Ghanaians, that these documents that we are asking for is acceptable, and that at the end of the day we will not be fighting ourselves that this is valid, this is not valid, and those things. So this is the first thing that we'll be looking at. Second thing is that, where do we set up registration centers when we come here, for instance, and any other country outside Ghana? Some have suggested that we use the Ghana embassy. Others are raising questions that the embassy staff are political appointees, even though we have career personnel there. So, if political appointees are in the embassies, are they acceptable to, let's say, a party in opposition when their members are not there? If we don't use the embassies, where else can we possibly go to? Who are going to be the electoral officials? According to the law, it's the Electoral Commission who must appoint these officials. Are we bringing people from Ghana? And if we're bringing people from Ghana, what are the cost implications and all of those things? Are we picking people from here? If we do, who qualifies to be electoral officer? So we'll look at that. The third question is, to which election should Ropaa apply? Presidential, parliamentary, what do we call it? Referenda, district assembly, what we call all those things that are there, MCC, MCEs, and all of those. Are we going to cut across everything? Because if every Ghanaian must vote, then that is it. Now, if everybody is going to vote, you don't live within a certain constituency while you are here. So if you are going to vote in every polling station or every constituency, what it means is that wherever we set up centers, it means that if we want to vote for Menchia, we must create a Menchia box, create an Asopa box, and create a Bantama box, and come to Ayawaso and go to all of those. Are we creating all these boxes here? So these are critical issues that we want to look at. The fourth question is, we've seen that in Ghana there are electoral infractions. Assuming those things happen, what law are we going to use to deal with those who are misbehaving? Is it the Ghanaian law? Is it the American law? Is it the Togolese law? Is it the Nigerian law? Because of the countries within which we'll be operating. So these are the critical issues that we need your input to address. I hope you are with me. All right. So let's go back to number one. Citizenship. Who is a Ghanaian? And what kind of document would we accept that this is a valid document to show that the person is a Ghanaian? Now, in the electoral law, reading from the Ghana electoral laws, please be with me. It says that a person who applies for registration as a voter shall provide as evidence of identification one of the following: a passport, a driver's license, national identification card, a national health insurance card, an existing voter identification card, or one voter registration identification guarantee form as set out in Form 1 of the schedule that has been completed and signed by 2 registered voters. So even in Ghana, where we are living, I cannot just say that I'm a Ghanaian and just walk into a police station to register. Certain things are required: passport, driver's license, national ID card, national health insurance, an old voter ID card. What would you and I accept here as valid to show that this person is a Ghanaian? So we throw it back to you to help us.
All right, I'll be taking 4 answers from the public. So if you know you have an answer to the question that you asked, 4 suggestions. Sorry, 4 suggestions from you. So for us to be able to meet the time required, I'll be taking 4 suggestions so that we can also have time to ask our various questions that we also have on our papers and on our iPad for them. All right, so who wants to go first? Who is a Ghanaian? Okay, I have seen Mr. Leslie.
We are recording the proceedings, so I would appeal to you that when the mic is given to you, you first tell us your name, and if you represent any organization, you let us know. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Bano. Actually, I used to be with Graphic years ago, but I'm here now. Been dealing with Division Radio. My answer to the question that you mentioned regarding the identity of who should qualify outside, I think with the experiences that we're all witnessing we have foreigners, Nigerians, Liberians, at certain points all having Ghanaian passports. Makes it so difficult for us to be able to depend solely on our own national passport. And therefore, I would suggest, possibly, if the embassies around wherever this Ropaa will be taking place, they need to come up with a vigorous sort of registration format where we have interviews, even though it shouldn't be that long, but that will form a little bit of extensive sort of information about you, the person, biographically, to really determine whether you are a Ghanaian, as against those who just walk in and say, well, I'm also a Ghanaian, and then we'll have a match to really ask for, to really ascertain the truthfulness of that person.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Atuisa, and I would want to identify with what the gentleman just said, that in addition to providing documentation to attest that one is a Ghanaian, I would want to suggest that we have several indigenous languages in our motherland. And so in addition to mere documentation, I would suggest that any person who would want to convince the electoral officials that he needs to be registered to be able to vote must at least be able to speak one indigenous Ghanaian language. And in addition, I will also want to suggest that such an individual, having provided documentation and having spoken an indigenous Ghanaian language, should also have at least 3 people who are themselves Ghanaians to also attest that such an individual is a Ghanaian. Once such requirements have been met, I think that individual should be given the opportunity to vote. And I'm suggesting this because we are all aware that there are a lot of non-Ghanaians who have in their possessions our Ghanaian passports and other Ghanaian documents. And so if we limit our requirement to just Ghanaian passports, we'll end up having a lot of people registering as Ghanaians when in fact they are not. Thank you.
And I said 4, and I have 2 over here, so I'll move to this side. I'll be with you. I'll give you one opportunity, but I saw your hand.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Nana Edujemfi. I'm representing Additional Association of Massachusetts President. As the question says, what kind of identification that one can prove to become eligible to vote? Usually, it's supposed to be your passport, Ghanaian passport, your birth certificate, driver's license, and voter's ID. The question of some non-Ghanaians being able to obtain those documents, I don't blame those who were able to obtain it. It's the fault of those who are in charge of those documents. In the United States here, if you want to have the American passport, you just have to present yourself and have the right document. If they give it to you, you have it. Whether you are Spanish, Brazilian, whatever, they give it to you and you have it. So once you have it, it's a proper identification. So nobody can blame you, how did you get it? Because if I go to the post office and I'm trying to get an American passport, there are things I have to put in place. If I'm able to provide it, they will give it to me. So if a Nigerian is holding a Ghanaian passport, I don't think we have the right to ask him. It's those in charge of birth and death certificates who gave me the right to hold it. They are responsible for those things. So we have to blame the authorities, not the one who is holding it. So for me, the documents have to be passport, birth certificate, driver's license, and older voter's ID. That is done everywhere. Thank you.
So, in that case, are you suggesting that anybody who presents a Ghanaian passport must be as well presumed to be a Ghanaian?
If it is a legible passport, then he is right to have it to be. If it's eligible, that he has a right passport. Right now we have biometric passport. If he has it, then he's a Ghanaian.
Anyway,
you cannot challenge him.
because the Deputy Chairman Operations will explain a
Okay,
few things
thank
to
you.
you.
The name is Bright.
I guess with this one, who is a Ghanaian, I'll give as many people as because it's an interesting question.
Yeah, the name is Bright Osebon Sujiman, Director of Elections and Research at USA. So, Osebon Sujiman. Fortunately for us, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The 1992 Constitution is not silent on who a Ghanaian is. Also, the Citizenship Act of 2000, Act 591, tells you who a Ghanaian citizen is. So there are two elements in play here. You can be a Ghanaian citizen, but you have to prove your citizenship. And our Constitution explicitly tells you how you can prove your citizenship. By virtue of you having a Ghanaian passport, there are processes that you have to go through to obtain that passport. And that confers Ghanaian citizenship on you. Just by the fact that you have a Ghanaian passport, it makes you a Ghanaian citizen. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel here.
All right. Thank you. Someone else. Okay.
My suggestion is as far as we have family home, my name is Elvis Osebon. As far as we have family home, we will have family biography. So they will put down the biographical information of the family home. And it could be easily checked to know that the guy is a citizen of Ghana or not.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Kwaku Bwachibwatinajima. I suggest that in addition to all the contribution Ajiman has said, I just want to add to what was said. The birth certificate is vital because regardless which nationality you possess, you still keep your Guinean birth certificate. So that one I think is crucial. We can add on top of what has been suggested. And secondly, I was in Ghana, and when they were conducting the registration of the national ID, the passport, the driver's license, I experienced a beautiful, digitized, captured your fingerprint and everything. So gone are the days that you sit home, you go, you send somebody to make you a passport or something like that. If it is in Ghana, it's a different thing. Over here, we don't have it. But over time, I suggest that you can do what you are doing in Ghana at the embassy so that we will be able, anybody who has a passport will have every features on him captured. And that will legitimize it better than what we have today. Somebody is from somewhere and they just pay money and they have it. So we make it a little bit tougher than it is today. That will be fine. So I suggest that the birth certificate is crucial on top of all the things that has been said. And also over the time, look at the processes that you are using. I am very impressed when I was in Ghana and I wanted to acquire driver's license. I could not do it by sending somebody to do it for me. You have to sit there, they capture your eye, capture your face, capture your fingerprint, and everything, including passport. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Samuel Francis La. As we all know, I'm not trying to discredit my country, but money overrides everything. Corruption. How money overrides everything. You might, Samuel Francis La is L.A. Now, you might say you put in certain things in place, but because of corruption and so on, it overrides everything. Human behaviors, we put structures in our ways to control us. That's why we have a refined and defined system here in the U.S. So like my brother was saying, that in the U.S., you find it very difficult acquiring a U.S. passport. Let's look at where we come from and compare the system here. I'm not trying to discredit my country, but the system here is really refined. So trying to apply the system that we have here to what we have in Ghana, you might be making a mistake. So if the Electoral Commission or the government really wants to give us chance to vote, they have to design a system to do a background check So when somebody comes in, the person has a passport, a driver's license, which from my point of view, I don't see it being right, because I'm not trying to report my country, because birth certificate, like my brother was saying, was being sold on the street in New York. It is true. So it's not, I'm not talking about whose fault it is, but now if somebody brings such birth certificate, are you going to accept it? That is, from my point of view as a national, it's wrong. So you design a system, when I bring a birth certificate, passport, whatever, take it out, it's fake. Go and design a system back home and find a way of doing a background check based upon the information that you've captured from me to see whether the documents that I'm presenting is valid or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm limiting the time to 2 minutes. I'll come to you, but I'm limiting the time to 2 minutes to each suggestion that you give. So as much as possible, we just reconcile our words and put them together. Then we'll be able to, whatever that suggestion that we are making, we're able to give it out. And they are here to write everything. Thank you.
My name is Kwesi Tabiri. So I think it's common knowledge that there are some people that are non-Ghanaians that have Ghanaian passports. Some people can dispute it for all they want to, but it's still a fact. For most people that have traveled around, we all meet people that will possibly tell you in the face that they are non-Ghanaians, but they have Ghanaian passports. So that's a non-starter. I think the current EC systems allow people to put in information, and I think those informations are stored on digital systems. This allows them a very good opportunity for them to cross-check information from what they have in the database with whatever information they collect from here. For example, my dad is registered in Ghana. He lives in Odomasi Low Cost in Sumiale. My brother is registered there. So for example, if I'm here and I register and I say, my dad is this and that and that, my brother is that and that and that, can we compare the information that I provide to you with whatever it is in the system in Ghana for a certain level of credibility? The second thing is with passports. You made mention that some people come here with passports going back as long as 30 years and so. People should be encouraged to re-register their passports. It's a legal document. Whether you're Ghanaian or non-Ghanaian, if you have a passport that is expired, it's expired. The law doesn't hold that passport as valid. So you cannot show up that I'm a Ghanaian, my passport expired 5 years ago, and I haven't renewed it, and I still want to be able to hold that I'm a Ghanaian. That doesn't hold. And I think this might go for a lot of people that are citizens of other countries, and they have Ghanaian passport, and they don't take the advantage of the policies and the law that allows them to be able to have dual citizenship and do the rightful thing. Because they are going to wait to that day and say, I'm a Ghanaian and I have a